Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Today is February 16th, 2023. This is our 135th episode. My name is Sunsara Taylor. I'm the co-host of the show, and I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Andy Z, our main host, is out again this week, but I'm joined here today by another member of our team, Rafael Kadaris. Welcome.
Good to be here, and welcome to all of our viewers, and a special shout out to all of our Patreons who are supporting the show.
The Revolution Nothing Less show is a show about an actual revolution, about overthrowing, bringing down and dismantling the system of capitalism imperialism that rules over us and that causes such hell and degradation and exploitation here and all over the world. We are followers of the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, the most important political thinker and leader on the planet today, the architect of the new communism. And in today's episode, you're going to be hearing from Bob Avakian directly, and you're going to be hearing more about him as we go forward.
And we're going to be inviting and challenging all of you to become part of this revolution. At the heart of today's episode is a major segment from Sunsara Taylor on International Women's Day, March 8th. She'll be telling you more about that. And we also want to invite you to a major fundraiser that we're hosting right here on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/therevcoms. It's going to be February 19th. It's a fundraiser for the RevComs. It's going to be more revolutionary, bigger, and more participatory than ever. So that means all of you got to tune in. You got to feed in your ideas and definitely donate to it. It's, again, February 19th, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Central Time. And Pete Ha, one of our correspondents, is going to be telling you more about that later on.
And you, Rafael, are doing a short segment, a very important segment, together with Noche Diaz, warning of the escalating threat of U.S. war and confrontation with China. So that'll be very important as well.
Yeah, that's right. And so why don't we get our episode started?
International Women's Day is coming, March 8th. This is an internationalist holiday, a time to stand with women all over the world in the fight to break thousands of years of patriarchal chains and to put an end to all oppression based on gender and sexual orientation. International Women's Day is a revolutionary holiday. It's a time to unleash the fury of women everywhere as a driving force for a real revolution aimed at the emancipation of all of humanity. And this is a liberating holiday, a time to lift our sights to a world where women and all people can finally and fully walk freely on this earth. So in coming weeks, we are going to get into different dimensions of this as we build for International Women's Day here on the Revolution Nothing Less show, and we're going to be inviting you to get involved in this all around the country. This week, we want to zero in on the very intense fight over abortion in this country, which is a key concentration of whether women will be enslaved or emancipated. And we want to get into how this is a key part of the fight for a real revolution here. We are principally going to do this by sharing part of the interview that Andy and I did here on the Revolution Nothing Less show with Bob Avakian last fall. We're going to share the question where I asked him about the Supreme Court's decision last year to overturn the constitutional right to abortion, what is driving this, and how it relates to the struggle for revolution. Our plan is to play the first half of Bob Avakian's answer to this. Then I'll be joined here in the studio by Lenny Wolff to have some conversation about this in light of International Women's Day. And then we'll return to and share the rest of Bob Avakian's answer. But first, I want to alert you to a major escalation in the fascist assault on abortion rights. Right now, a fanatically fascist federal judge who was appointed by Donald Trump and sits on a court down in Amarillo, Texas, is considering a case that's been brought by a bunch of Dark Ages anti-abortion theocrats. This case is aimed at revoking the FDA's approval of mifepristone, one of the main drugs used in medication abortions.
It is called mifepristone, and it stops the production of a hormone necessary for pregnancy. A federal judge in Texas, one appointed by former President Donald Trump, could make a decision that would upend access to mifepristone nationwide, which means nationwide. And that includes blue states like California and New York. It includes states that have recently enshrined access to abortions in their state constitutions, like Michigan and Vermont. No matter where you live, this could impact you.
In other words, this federal judge is getting ready to decide whether to take mifepristone off the market and ban doctors and abortion providers from providing the most common means of abortion to women all across this country. And there is the profound danger that such a decision, if it were made, would be upheld by the fascists who sit on the judiciary all the way up to the Supreme Court. Dahlia Lithwick gives a sense of the massive impact this would have when she wrote at Slate.com, quote, "Given that the majority of abortion patients use abortion pills, this move would overwhelm providers, creating months-long wait lists for abortion procedures, even in deep blue states. The result would be an unprecedented backup as people sought to get procedures, what are called surgical abortions, instead, and likely thousands of patients in states like New York or California, or really anywhere, would be unable to obtain an abortion in time, even if state laws protect their right to do so." End quote. So with this immediate threat further underscoring the stakes of the fight over abortion and the importance of International Women's Day this year, let's go to our interview with Bob Avakian. I want to ask one more question about the situation that we confront, and you touched on it with the Supreme Court overturning women's fundamental right to abortion. And this, as you said, this sent shockwaves across this country and has been shattering the lives of women and girls on a massive scale already, and worse is to come. And millions of people are outraged by this. Many are terrified about it, but most have no idea, no real understanding as to why this is happening. And it really stands out that you have been analyzing and warning about this and leading people in how to fight against this assault on abortion and what it concentrates for decades. I wondered if you could talk some about what you see concentrated in this fight around abortion and how this relates to the revolution that we need to make.
Well, first of all, you have to understand, why has there been this attack? And yes, it's been an attack on women's right to abortion. Go ask any of the Christian fascists out there who are the stormtroopers for this, and they'll tell you straight up it's about controlling women and getting women to be back in their subordinate position, because in the eyes of these people, they're getting all out of control. That doesn't mean that people who are, trans people who may have the situation where they can get pregnant shouldn't have the right to abortion. Of course they should. But the essence of what's going on here and has been going on for decades is the attack, to forcibly subjugate women even more thoroughly and viciously than they already are discriminated against and violently oppressed under this system. And, but then you have to go deeper. Ask yourself, where did all these Christian fascists come from? I mean, yes, they if you listen to them, they'll often say, that satanic woman, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, went to the Supreme Court in 1962 and challenged the right of schools to carry out prayer in the schools. And the stupid and satanic Supreme Court at that time, before we got a hold of it, that stupid Supreme Court actually went along with it and overturned the right to have prayer in the schools. And ever since they kicked God out of the schools in the early 1960s, because of that satanic woman, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, and that terrible Supreme Court, everything has gone to hell in this country. Now, a lot of them will tell you this, or they'll say it even if you don't ask them, and even if you don't want to hear it. But let's go deeper. Where did this whole Christian fascist thing come from, and why? Because there have been, if you go read that Raymond Latta article on revcom.us that I referred to, Imperialist Parasitism and Social and Class Recomposition in the U.S., if you go read that, you will see, spelled out concretely, that there have been major changes both internationally and within the U.S. in the economy. And one of the major changes has been that because of the reconfiguring of the economy, there's more need for people in professional categories, in the technical, categories and so on. And so this has opened up more opportunity, and together with struggle that's been waged since the 70s in particular against the oppression of women, this has resulted in opening up a lot more of these positions, including, college admissions and so on, to women. I think women now outnumber men in the universities. And so, that has created a situation where a lot of women, it's not that they're no longer oppressed. I mean, just look at the statistics. How many are raped? Look at the massive, pornography, which is just an assault on women as a whole, everywhere. And it's not agency, it's oppression, okay? That's one thing that I can't stand is when people who don't really want to take on the system at all or in any serious way think they can get over, I don't know whom they're trying to get over on, but other than other people who are also suffering, but they try to get over by rebranding oppression as agency. Sex work, that's agency. No, it's not. It's oppression. It's institutionalized, financialized degradation of women. So just to go on it for a second, because I think this is important. Some of these people say, well, under capitalism, any kind of job you have is exploitative, so what's the difference in sex work? Well, there is a difference. Yes, capitalism is a system based on exploitation, and especially super exploitation of people, including, as I said, more than 150 million children in the third world. But, if you're working in a factory, say in Bangladesh, as a woman producing clothes, you're being exploited in producing those clothes, but the product you're working on and producing is clothes. If you're working in the so-called sex industry, which is just, as I said, vicious exploitation and institutionalized and financialized degradation of women, because what is the product? Besides your exploitation, what is the product? The product is the degradation of women. It's not clothes, it's not food, it's not televisions. The product, besides your exploitation, the product is the degradation of women. That's the whole point of it. And the same in pornography. So, all this is a backlash against these changes that have occurred. The incel phenomenon where men, want to rape women because they can't get women to agree to have sex with them the way they want. I mean, they openly talk about raping women, And this, these are all phenomena that have occurred fundamentally because of underlying changes in the economy, which then interacts with, struggles of people and resulting changes in the social relations. And so a big part of what has been driving this fascist movement is these changes that have resulted in women have a little bit more independence, especially women in the, more professional categories. But even women working in lower jobs who have their own income. I remember I never quite knew what exactly he was getting at with this, but I used to have a record way back in the day when I was in high school of the blues singer Leadbelly. And he introduced he had a song called National Defense Blues because it was about the World War II. And when a lot of, black people came from the South, and one of the first things they did was to get jobs in the war industries, the defense plants. And that included a number of women. And so Leadbelly introduced this song. He said, people come to me, men, he meant men, come to me and say, Leadbelly. And I say, yeah. They say, I can't control my woman the way I used to. And I say, yeah. And they say, well, Leadbelly, they go and work in the defense plant and they got their own money and I can't tell them what to do the way I used to. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, Leadbelly, can't you do something about this? So he wrote the song National Defense Blues, which wasn't exactly about that. But I never quite knew from what point of view he was telling his story. But anyway, it reflects something, and this is happening on a major scale in the last number of decades. So this is a big part of what's driving the fascist movement, is wanting to forcibly, push women and control women back into a subordinated position. Even more than they already are under the system, because there's plenty of oppression all the time. But they want it, back the way it was, even before these relatively minor, but real changes have occurred.
All right, we're going to pause BA's answer there. And as promised, I am joined in studio now by Lenny Wolff. Lenny is a longtime follower of Bob Avakian and a frequent guest on this, The Revolution Nothing Less show. Lenny, welcome.
Well, hi to you, Sunsara, and I want to just jump right in here, and I want to ask you to respond to what we just listened to in light of the fact that we're in the run-up to International Women's Day on March 8th.
There's so much in what we just heard from BA, but I think listening this time, there's really two things I want to pull out of what he said, and one is where he began. just stating the truth of the fact that the assault on abortion rights is a concentrated expression of the assault on women and women's lives. And this is so often obscured. It's attacked. There's an erasure of women. Maybe we'll talk about that as we go forward. But BA tells the truth on this and puts it in focus. And then he substantiates that more fully through the rest of what we just heard from him, which is the second thing I wanted to pull out of this, is that Bob Avakian situates all these attacks on women in a society that is, yes, patriarchal, but also he looks to the underlying dynamics of this capitalism, imperialism, and the economic changes, the way it's ripped up the traditional forms of family, of life in this country and around the world, and how this is actually what's causing such a violent backlash, such a vengeful, punitive resurgence of misogynist patriarchy and assault in all these ways. And nobody else looks at this question with that amount of science and materialism and back and forth between, yes, the ideas in people's heads, but not just that, also the underlying system and the way those things are interrelating.
And the back and forth between the struggles that people wage, both around this question and other things they come into political life around, which then evoke this very, very deep question of the oppression of women. I want to go to a statement that was written almost 40 years ago. And he discusses there some of the changes that had just begun to take shape, which have become very accentuated now. And he says the whole question of the position and role of women in society is more and more acutely posing itself in today's extreme circumstances. This is a powder keg in the U.S. today. It is not conceivable that this will find any resolution other than in the most radical terms and through extremely violent means. The question yet to be determined is, will it be a radical reactionary or a radical revolutionary resolution? Will it mean the reinforcing of the chains of enslavement or the shattering of the most decisive links in those chains and the opening up of the possibility of realizing the complete elimination of all forms of such enslavement? I want you to respond to what that evokes in you.
First of all, as we heard in BA, the first half of the answer from the interview that we just played from BA, he is talking about really profound changes in the economy overall and the social position overall, and how this is leading to a huge fight that's even more acutely posed than when he brought forward that statement almost 40 years ago. It's even more acutely and immediately posed for resolution, whether women will be further enslaved and beaten down and beaten backwards in very violent ways, or whether this unleashing of the fury of women and the fight against their patriarchal degradation will be a very key and driving force in resolving this in a positive way. Really a revolution that overthrows this system that requires and drives forward this patriarchy. And I think you see this, really you see it all over the world. It's easier, I think, for many people to see if they're willing to look and not be in denial, especially in this parasitic country where people can avert their eyes and obsess into themselves. But if you look honestly, you can see the intensifying degradation and enslavement of women. You see it in the incel phenomenon. You see it in the booming sex slavery industry. You see it in the rising Islamic fundamentalism with its terror against women around the world. And you see it in this country with the Christian fascist assault, which is intensifying. The overturning of Roe v. Wade, and now this court case that could take away medication abortion, and many other assaults happening at the same time. But I want to zero in on the possibility for a radical, positive resolution to this. And I think nowhere in the world do you see this more powerfully today, and in a way that carries more hope and inspiration than the women in Iran, who in the last few months have erupted with just enormous bravery against first the killing by the morality police there of Mahsa Jina Amini for allegedly wearing her hijab in the wrong way, but then the floodgates of fury, of unbridled fury poured out. Women went in the streets, they burned their hijabs, they tore them off, they cut their hair in public, they lit bonfires, and they, school kids shouting down the paramilitary Basiji were coming to get them back in their place. And you saw the bravery and the heroism and the power of this uncorked fury, but you also saw, and I think this is strategically significant, the way that this began to unglue and rip apart a lot of the larger cohering so-called legitimacy of that Islamic regime as a whole. I think in this regard, it's worth it to also look last summer here in this country. Even though the struggle did not reach nearly enough of a massive level and didn't go far enough and it got derailed and attacked, but there was very significant outpourings where you get a glimpse of this potential in this country too, in the run-up to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and then in the immediate aftermath. And you saw tens of thousands of very young women, high school women, junior high, college women, furious. And you saw older women who have held really for decades in secret their own terrifying memories of holding friends as they died from illegal abortions that they've held silent. And this came out in a way that I think surprised many of them themselves. It's a fury they didn't know was within them.
You were obviously at the forefront of that struggle you just described. And both in that struggle and the struggle in Iran, these are very important struggles. At the same time, they do need to go further. And they do need to go into they need to be part of a total system change, of a revolution. How do you sum up, particularly some of the experience of the past year around the struggle for abortion rights from that angle?
I want to speak first positively to the positive lessons, and we've been wrestling, those of us involved in the movement for revolution, with how to sum up and mine and extract all the positive lessons, as well as to really interrogate the shortcomings and where we needed to have done better and need to do better now going forward. So I'm raising some provisional thoughts in that context, but also inviting all of you to be part of wrangling with this and sharing your thoughts. But positively, there is no question it mattered tremendously that I took the responsibility, really rooted in the leadership that BA has been providing, his analysis on this question of abortion and its importance and the liberation of women as part of the revolution, to go out, and the analysis of the need and the basis to unite very broadly, that I played an initiating role in Rise Up for Abortion Rights together with others from different perspectives. And we forged a movement and an organization that did unite people with radically different points of view, different experiences, in a very ferocious struggle that raised the demand, legal abortion on demand and without apology, that told the truth, forced motherhood is female enslavement. It matters that this was challenged. Some of what developed, not only because of the fascist assault, but also because it was being challenged, and you saw that two-sidedness, you started to see things with very significant implications looking forward to a revolution. Things like women, veterans, of the U.S. military, it's enforcers of its system around the world, who said, I thought I was fighting for our freedoms in this country, but look what they're doing to women. I don't believe in this anymore. They lit their uniforms on fire. They did it publicly.
I put my armor on, show you how strong I am. I put my armor on, I'll show you that I am. I'm unstoppable. I'm a Porsche with no brakes. I'm invincible. I win every single game. I'm so powerful. I don't need batteries to play. I'm so confident.
You start to see how these attacks, if challenged and fought, could be part of splitting open the ruling institutions. That has profound implications for revolution. So there's a lot of positive lessons to mine. At the same time, there are important negative lessons to sum up as well. When people rise up, they're going along. Their thinking is shaped by this system. They're living under this system. They're not out in the street. Then something shocks them and challenges them. This decision comes down. They were outraged. They went into the streets, but they're still carrying a lot of the thinking of the system. And we needed to and still need to do much more to go after the backwards ways of thinking that they're still carrying. And, one example, and it wasn't just what they were carrying. It was also forces against this struggle who are attacking it, trying to suppress it, trying to derail it from the Democratic Party, from the so-called movements who are tied to the Democratic Party and really invested in keeping this system stable and going along. So one of the big attacks they did, and BA spoke to it in the beginning of the excerpt that we just played, is they tried to erase the word woman and erase women from the struggle overall. And they would attack Rise Up, and they would attack me and BA for even using the word women in talking about abortion. They'd say, you're being transphobic, because there are trans people and non-binary people who also need abortions. And that should be defended, and the attacks on trans people need to be forcefully fought. But the attack on abortion is a concentration of the drive against women, and that needs to be understood and fought for, and obscuring that actually disarms people to fight. And so that's something we needed to go after much more forcefully. One of the biggest attacks and most vicious attacks and coordinated attacks was on Bob Avakian, on the RevComs, and on myself as a follower of Bob Avakian, casting him, claiming he was some kind of manipulative, spooky, scary cult leader that you should stay away from. And this is just completely outrageous, it's grotesque, and it's cowardly. Bob Avakian has done more than anybody in identifying and leading people and fighting for people to have the understanding and the programmatic approach to fight the assaults on abortion rights and the larger Christian fascist assault, yes, on trans people and others. And he's continued to put this forward and to substantively bring forward how this is linked to a revolution. It's one thing to engage, disagree, argue over what he's saying, but that's not what people were doing. They were trying to use scare words and attack him and scare people away precisely to keep people in the bounds of this system and to isolate the idea of revolution and the struggle that actually needs to be uncorked and where it can go. And this was outrageous, and we needed to much more aggressively, much more early on, take this on and make it boomerang and actually become a way in which more people got attracted to this controversy, leaned in. What is he saying? What do I think of it? And actually use this to advance the struggle for revolution. Because you engage BA, you get substantive answers. You get a critical thinker. You get a scientific revolutionary leader. You do not get a cult leader. And that's our greatest strength. And we need to be much more combative and out on the offense around that.
I really fully agree with both those points. And I think that the larger point you're making, that the revolution moves forward by actually mining its experience for both the positive and the negative and subjecting it to, yes, scientific analysis. And again, nobody has been more exemplary in that light than Bob Avakian, including, I would just say, if you go to revcom.us and you look into collected works that BA has done on the oppression of women, there is a tremendous amount of really re-examination of the feminist movement and thinkers of the late 1960s and into the 70s and beyond. There's a real look at the Marxist movement and what it did bring forward, but what its shortcomings were, how we carried forward some of those shortcomings. But at the same time, again, just to underscore it, there is nobody who has done the work that he has done on this question and where it sits in the world today. And I would challenge anybody to disprove that. Part of what that work has been to actually envision in a different way, to build on the experience of the past, but to go much further, to criticize it where it was wrong, to get the kernel of what was correct and bring that forward on what kind of society could actually liberate women as part of emancipating all of humanity. This is crystallized in the Constitution for the New Socialist Republic in North America, authored by Bob Avakian. And I want to ask you, okay, you make a revolution, you bring forward millions of people, you shatter their instruments of violent domination and repression. You've got a new government with new laws, new ways of doing things that is now taking ownership of the ways in which the wealth of the society is produced so that it's collective ownership. You've made all these changes. What happens on day one in this new society around this question of the liberation of women? And what happens in year 12 or year 15? Trip out a little bit.
Okay, well, first of all, it's a great question, and everybody should be thinking, and we actually all should be thinking about this, reading this and envisioning and wrestling with what will be made possible. In this Constitution, it is, like you said, it rests on a radically different economic foundation. It's not based on exploitation and profit. All the things that B.A. described in the first answer about the way that capitalism, imperialism is driving forward and reinforcing and giving rise to vicious revenge against women, those underlying dynamics won't be there. So there's things that you can change day one in the realm of law, and we will. You know, this Constitution, the new state power, guarantees the right to abortion. It guarantees the fundamental rights of women to participate in society fully and equally together with men, and it backs that up. But it also has an underlying economy that enables you to go to work at overcoming a lot of the ways in people's relations. I mean, think about it. Right now, one of the things that drives women into the sex industry, a lot of women who are caught up in it, they're trying to support a child. You know, they're in desperate conditions. Why do women stay with abusers? Yes, there's the way they're conditioned, but a lot of it is because they're economically trapped and don't have a way to get out or to take care of the kids if they do. And so they're trapped in living with abuse. This is very common. Well, socialism, a new state power, enables you to go at those, changing the relations among people and their thinking and how they relate, but it also starts to change the underlying economic foundation so that kids are not the sole responsibility of the patriarchal family, and in particular the mother, where she is desperate and driven to extreme ends and in an extremely vulnerable situation to be exploited because she is uniquely responsible for those children. And then there's all kinds of realms in the thinking of people and the daring of women and differently gendered people to challenge the ways they've been told to stay in their place and what tradition is and what's the right way and the wrong way to have sex or to relate to others or to dress and to be. You know, there's all kinds of attitudes that'll be in religion and teachings. There's going to be an education system that every child is required to participate in, public education that teaches actual science and biology about people's bodies, about evolution, about how we came to be, about reproduction. They're going to create a different atmosphere. There's all kinds of dimensions that we can explore in the arts and the culture, in the media as it's envisioned and concretized here. There's a lot to trip out on. I'm only beginning to. Maybe you want to add some things to it, but I think there's a whole radical interpenetration between things that you can change right away with laws that are concretized, things that start to change in the economy that give you more space, and things that will change in the struggle that gets waged by women against their continued forms of oppression and tradition that will be given backing by the culture overall.
Yeah, I think just one dimension I would want to add or infuse into that is that this is going to be a society in which debate, dissent, critical thinking isn't just tolerated or, I mean, you know what I love in America? You can do that over in the free speech zone. Way the hell over there. You can go carry your sign where nobody can see you. No, this is going to be fostered. We want that. There's the whole third reel of the interview with Bob Avakian goes into why we want that and what kind of society that's going to give you. Yes, there's a solid core to the society. There's rules, there's laws, there's a direction. But on that basis, the widest possible dissent, and on this question in particular, that's going to be a big thing. And there's other dimensions of this too that I think more the question than we exploring right now is to explore it in future shows, but also to call on, let's get you guys out there in the audience thinking about this, writing us, raising questions, raising disagreements, raising what you want to hear addressed as part of building a whole movement that's got at least one foot in the future we're fighting for, and looking at this wretched, wretched present that we live in from a whole different point of view.
Yeah, so there's a tremendous amount that we want to invite you into. There's much more to explore. But we want to close out this conversation by inviting you also to get involved in planning and organizing for International Women's Day this year. We need to break the chains and unleash the fury of women as a mighty force for this revolution. And so write to us, reach out to us on social media, wherever you are across this country. Get in touch, because we have to make a real advance this year, 2023, in putting revolution on the map.
So this is a big part of what's driving the fascist movement, is wanting to forcibly, push women and control women back into a subordinated position. Even more than they already are under the system, because there's plenty of oppression all the time. But they wanted, back the way it was, even before these relatively minor, but real changes have occurred. And so the other thing to understand is the leaders of this Christian fascism, going back to someone like Jerry Falwell, who founded the Moral Majority and founded, Liberty University. Now, one of the things that, I never realized this till I was reading recently. Liberty University is a massive university now. It has tens of thousands of students. And, I like to follow the NCAA tournament championship, but fuck it, here comes Liberty University all of a sudden playing it. I say, anybody, beat these motherfuckers, okay? I don't care. I'll even root for Baylor. Just fuck another bunch of Christian fundamentalists. Just beat these motherfuckers and get them out of this tournament now, okay? But, Jerry Falwell founded, that university and got going with the Moral Majority, him and Pat Robertson and all these Christian fundamentalists. And Jerry Falwell, at the beginning, in the 50s, was openly opposed to the civil rights movement. And then he had to do a whole mea culpa. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have opposed that. Well, then he turned around and opposed the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa in the 80s, by the way. So he wasn't that sorry. But what he did recognize, this is tactically unwise. The civil rights movement, the ruling class of this country, because of its needs internationally, is going to make concessions to the civil rights struggle. It's going to, abolish some legal segregation, open up some positions to black people, and, so on and so forth. So he switched gears, and then in the 70s, they concentrated their whole thrust around the oppression of women. They decided this is, one of them openly said, this is a door through which we can get all these, people who are upset about all these things, including the concessions to the struggle against white supremacy. We can get them all by making the thing about abortion so-called killing of babies. And so, this is why they took this up. But again, all this was, what was going on underneath all this was changes in the economy because of the needs of U.S. imperialism to contend in the world, both economically and militarily, because your military, after all, where does it get its weapons from? Where does it get its, logistics from? Where does it get its supplies from? Where does it get its food from? From the economy. So they had a need to contend internationally. And, this is why, for example, if you include China, 80% of the production workers in the world are in the third world. And, here's a statistic that shines light on what I'm talking about. Just a couple of decades ago, a little less than 60% of the clothes that people wear in this country were made in this country. Now it's 1 or 2%. They're made in places like Bangladesh and other places where there are all these garment factories viciously exploiting people, particularly women. So, this was the changes that in turn led to the changes in the U.S. economy, where you had more of these professional jobs. And that's why, along with the struggle, there was more opening for women. And this is what has driven this fascist movement. And is why it's taken on this religious cloak, but it's a real thing, this religious fundamentalism. Because if you look at the Bible, I don't care, I know a number of years ago there were these feminists who didn't want to let go of the Bible. And so they wanted to, think about it in terms of things today. They wanted to go through and change all the pronouns in the Bible. So instead of God, would be he, God would be it. Well, here's the problem. You can change all the pronouns, but you can't change the reality. The Bible is a thoroughly patriarchal document from beginning to end, from the book of Genesis all the way through to Paul's epistles and all the rest of it. It's a patriarchal document, horrific patriarchy. In fact, if you look at it, I mean, women should be killed for having sex before they're married. If they're not virgins when they get married, you have to show the bloody sheet to prove that they were virgins. I mean, first of all, not all women bleed when they first have sex, but leaving that aside, you have to show the bloody sheet, or else the woman should be put to death in the town hall or the town center. This is a patriarchal document, so you can go changing all the pronouns, but you can't change the patriarchy. God is still going to be God the Father, the patriarchal oppressor. This is the way it is. This is the reality. So, this is why this religion was, a useful way to rally all these fascist forces. Because if you took it, look, there are liberals and progressive people who are religious, and some of them do very good things, and we should appreciate that and unite with them as far as possible in the struggle against oppression. And many of them say, look, there's bad stuff in the Bible, just like there's bad stuff in everything. There's bad stuff in communism. There's bad stuff in the Bible, yes, but, we choose to focus on the message of Jesus, which is to do right by the poor and so on and so forth. Okay, they're practicing what I call, salad bar Christianity. They go down the line, oh, I don't like this one here, like children who disobey their parents should be put to death. Oh, no, not that one, but like feed the poor. Yeah, I can go with that, In fact, the Christian fascists practice salad bar Christianity too. If you start challenging them, what about this stuff here? Some of them openly will say that homosexuals should be put to death, as it says in Leviticus. But most of them will say, well, that was the Old Testament, now we got a New Testament. We got a new covenant with God in the New Testament, so that's different. But you go to the New Testament, and Paul is all about women should be subordinate to men. And he links it back to the Old Testament. He links it back to Eve in the garden, when she's the one that got taken in by the snake, and then she misled Adam. So now childbirth is going to be a burden for women because of that. It's all, you go read the Bible if you have time. This is all in there. But so if you're a fundamentalist, what do? You take all the stuff that really leans heavily on this patriarchy and these oppressive relations. The Bible defends slavery, for example. Now you see some of these fascists openly saying, well, slavery wasn't really that bad. It did, some of the conditions of the slave improved from how they were living in Africa. I mean, just horrific stuff like this. And I see Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, made a statement where he said, nobody started questioning slavery until the United States was founded with the Declaration of Independence saying that all men are created equal. Well, this is just absolute bullshit, including, as I pointed out before, I think some of the slaves at least were questioning slavery before the Declaration of Independence was written, including in the uprisings of slaves, even during the colonial days before the country was founded. But see, they lean on this Bible and this heavy religious stuff for two reasons. And I know I've gone on, but I'm going to just finish this point. For two reasons. One, because it is heavily patriarchal and it does uphold all kinds of horrific oppressive relations and slaughter of people who don't get with the right God and so on. If you don't believe me, go read the Bible with an open mind. The other thing is religious fundamentalism, and this is true of religion in general, but all the more so of religious fundamentalism, teaches people to be unthinking. It teaches people to accept things, quote unquote, on faith. It teaches them to be slavishly following religious authorities. And so this is if you want to develop a fascist movement, you need legions of unthinking people who are anti-scientific. And you can see it, all the conspiracy. I saw somebody raise an objection about calling conspiracy theories because they're not really theories, but leaving that aside. They don't deserve to be called theories. But leaving that aside, you got all these conspiracy theories, and all the rest of it, all these people, QAnon, all the rest of these people, you need legions of unthinking people if you want a fascist movement. The exact opposite, by the way, of communism, which needs legions of critically and creatively thinking people. So this is why the Christian fundamentalism is such a, powerful and useful rallying cry for all these people who basically their position is, and this is why they said the 2020, and this is the underlying reason why they all believe fervently, with religious zeal, that the 2020 election was illegitimate and stolen from Trump. It's because they regard the people who voted for the Democrats, and we don't want them voting for Democrats, by the way, although in 2020 we did, and we can get into that too if you want. But in general, we don't want them voting for Democrats, but all the people who voted for the Democrats, you can go down the list, gay people, the LGBTQ, women, especially women, and there are lots of women fascists, by the way, we have to recognize, but women, especially thinking women who don't want to be subordinate to men, black people in their overwhelming, Latinos in large numbers, all these people in the eyes of the Christian fundamentalist fascists are illegitimate. So therefore, in their thinking, and it's just barely beneath the surface, if not right on the surface, in their thinking, if those people are the ones, are the reason why the Democrats won the election, then the election's illegitimate. And that's why they believe all these, theories that have been, and assertions and claims that have been disproved about fraud in the election, because it doesn't matter to them, really, if it was fraudulent or not. It was illegitimate because all these people who were not legitimate, not real Americans, not what we want this country to be about, and should be put back in their place as violently as necessary, if not literally wiped out. All those people are the reason why we didn't win the election.
There is so much in the second half of that answer from Bob Avakian that we could fill a whole nother episode wrangling with it. But we're going to have to move forward in today's show. We can't do that today, but I do want to urge you to think about, that was just one answer out of 3 major interviews that we had with Bob Avakian. There is so much in these to open up your understanding of what is happening in this world, why it's happening, and to get to know this revolutionary leader and the vision of a new society and the largeness of mind that embodies and the strategy for how we can make that real. I want to urge you, when this episode is over, if you haven't yet, to watch all 3 of these interviews on our channel, and even if you have, to return to them, to wrangle with them, to share them with friends and family, and to get into them and to correspond with us about them, and also to take these out in society and spread them very broadly. It will make a tremendous difference. It will be a game changer if these interviews get out among tens of thousands and even millions. It will change what people are thinking about, what they're concerning themselves with, how they understand this world and their place in it. It will lift their sights, and it will be a major dynamic factor in the fight for the future that we need, a real revolution in the emancipation of humanity. So I want to put that charge to you together with us here on this show to spread these, to dig into them. And with that, we want to move forward in today's show. We have a segment now on the intensifying conflict between the U.S. imperialists and China.
I'm Rafael Kadaris with the RNL show, the Revolution Nothing Less show, and my next guest is a real-life brainwashed American chauvinist. Welcome to the RNL show.
Brother, let me tell you, have you heard about these Chinese balloons? Don't worry, bro. We shot them down. But there were these Chinese balloons, and we found some other Chinese aircrafts. They were like UFOs, man. They could have been aliens. I mean, think they were aircraft. They were like one of those unidentified UFOs. And I think they were Chinese. But they were flying over our country, okay? They were flying over our territory, man. I mean, one of them was over Canada. But, we can't let them get away with this, all right? They probably watching us right now with their spies and their satellites. We can't let them do this to us. America, they're probably setting up military bases all over the world with their nuclear weapons and surrounding us with their boats and ships and stuff. And they're probably going to threaten to invade us and everything, man. Which one am I talking to? But we can't let this go down, man.
Man, what the fuck are you talking about? Literally everything you just mentioned are things that the U.S. is doing right now.
What?
It's the U.S. that has over 750 military bases in over 80 countries. Many of these are right on China's eastern and southern borders. South Korea, for example, has over 73 U.S. bases. Japan has over 50,000 U.S. troops stationed there. The U.S. is a much bigger nuclear threat than China, and by the way, is the only country ever to use nuclear weapons. The US is the one that's threatening to attack China over Taiwan, even though Taiwan is part of China.
Are you one of them Chinese agents?
And guess how many military bases China has around the world?
Probably lots, like thousands and stuff, or like maybe even millions.
1 in Africa. China doesn't have military bases in Mexico and nuclear weapons pointed at the US. China doesn't have Navy vessels off the coast of California conducting war exercises like the US is doing in the South China Sea.
They could.
China doesn't have fighter jets, bombers, drones, and satellites encircling the entire globe like the US does. And yet we're all supposed to be scared and outraged about a few balloons and cheer as the US pushes things closer to a dangerous war with China?
Yeah, USA.
Stop buying into this bullshit. To be clear, China is an oppressive capitalist imperialist power too. It is not a socialist or communist society. But whatever China is doing, it pales in comparison to the crimes of US imperialism and its worldwide war machine. Learn more about all this at revcom.us. We've been covering the US's intensifying conflict with China and the real threat this poses of war, as well as the disgusting anti-Asian xenophobia being whipped up all across this country. Don't be a brainwashed American chauvinist. Go dig into it at revcom.us and act accordingly.
The masses of people in the world, and this is very acutely and urgently posed now, the masses of people in the world cannot any longer afford. It was always terrible that these are the people ruling the world, but it's now acutely posed. We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to dominate the world and to determine the destiny of humanity. They need to be overthrown as quickly as possible.
Hey, this is Pete on the street, and I want to talk to you about something that is very exciting, and that is fundraising to put revolution on the map. That means tuning into our fundraising livestream on February 19th. It's going to be bigger, more revolutionary, more participatory than ever. We're aiming for and looking to move beyond our $100,000 goal. As we are recording this, we are just about $75,000. Now think about it. After the murder of Tyree Nichols and the suppression of Black history being taught in schools, the threat of nuclear war and warmongering between the imperialist US, China, and Russia, more outrages against women and LGBTQ people, the repression against immigrant people, and the further and further destruction of our environment. Within that terrible they want to force upon us is a chance for something truly emancipating. A real revolution. This means putting revolution on the map right now. A key way to do that right now is by getting into the Bob Avakian interviews. These interviews give people a way to get to know BA and the revolution he is leading. They reach deep inside people in their hearts and in their minds, and getting those interviews widely will take funds. Around the country, revolution clubs and supporters are doing many creative things to support and fund the revolution. In Chicago, about 40 people attended a dinner and an open mic that raised over $1,000. In Houston, along with establishing revolutionary change jars at several businesses, people are selling dinner tickets to next weekend's Afghan chicken palau and Punjabi vegetarian dinner sale. In Berkeley, they raised over $500 selling Iranian and Mediterranean food plates donated by local restaurants. At Revolution Books in Berkeley, they raised over $500 in sales of used books and donations. You gotta check out revcom.us to see what other cities are doing to raise funds. Since our last fundraising live stream with Michelle and Lenny, here in LA, I've been out on the street documenting the revcoms on the ground who have been out in the world in a bold and compelling way. In response to the brutal murder of Tyree Nichols by Memphis police.
It's crazy how police brutality still exists on to this day.
We have to end this. And if you're sick and tired of seeing face after face, of hearing mother after mother crying because they will no longer be able to hold their baby, then you have to get organized for revolution. Because there is a way to put an end to murder by police, but it's by putting an end to this system.
We were out among the masses, shining a light on the terrible and needless murders by the police with the real way out. I've also been at the fundraisers organized by the Revolution Club LA. We just had an open mic recently. It was a beautiful experience.
Eye contact and confidence misinterpreted as disrespect or a challenge. Fighting for your life with no sudden moves, but a steady maintained balance. By what right do you claim ownership and superiority over an entire culture, while you rape, plunder, and murder with characteristics of a vulture?
People came together to forge a revolutionary culture, and it felt like even though we didn't all know each other in the beginning, we all had each other's backs by the end. A Latina mother came to bear witness to the injustice done to her son, Edgar Ortiz, who was just 32 years old and a father of 7. It was really heavy when she spoke, and someone new from the Revolution Club jumped up and got on the mic briefly afterward to express her condolences and her support, and gave a very personal reason for why she was a part of this movement for revolution. We raised over $200, and 2 people even bought the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, and the next open mic is in the works. Just 2 days ago, the Revcoms went out to Santa Monica Pier to sell flowers that were donated by local vendors as a fundraiser.
It's bigger than you or me. Flowers for humanity. We're doing a fundraiser here today.
This was an idea that came out of a Revolution Club meeting. We had high impact when Michelle, who is the leader of the Revolution Club, began agitating joyously about what we were doing there that brought in some people walking by to come up to us to talk and to buy flowers for a loved one. Some people simply liked the message and donated on the spot. Someone from the Revolution Club designed a beautiful revolutionary Valentine's card that we gave them. We raised over $200 in the flower sales. Again, all this is part of putting real revolution on the map in 2023. This is where your money will go to when you donate. It goes to the volunteers who have uprooted their lives for something far much better than what they could be doing. It goes to the show, the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show that airs every week, and the website revcom.us, which gives guidance and leadership and where you can find BA's works. And it goes to bringing more and more people into this revolution. As Lenny said last week on the RNL show,
we are absolutely serious about making revolution in this rare time when revolution is more possible than it normally is. We are absolutely serious about making this revolution, putting this revolution on the map in 2023. That is making it so that people know about this revolution. Whatever they think about it, they need to know about it, and increasing numbers of people need to be coming towards it. And you, all of you in the audience, have a role to play. The revolution is not just made by the revolutionaries. It's not just made by the leadership. There needs to be masses of people who may not be sure about revolution, but who are supportive of it, who want to see this out there, who hunger it all for a whole new world and are beginning to get into this revolution. If any of that fits you, you need to be part of this movement. You need to be coming to the live stream and being part of a community that's taking shape around this revolution.
like Lenny said, let's fundraise in a very big way through Sunday when the live stream airs on YouTube. Let's really push it. So, mark your calendars for February the 19th. Make a list of people you're going to call and message about this upcoming live stream, and then set up watch parties for the day of. Donate now and become a Patreon. Send video statements of yourself or the people you are meeting about why you're donating.
All right, so we have made it to the end of our 135th episode. Rafael, anything you want to send people off with?
I want to make sure that people tune into the fundraising live stream this Sunday, February 19th. Become a Patreon, support this show, and smash that like button and leave a comment below.
All right, so do all those things. We're definitely looking forward to Sunday. And spread this show. Let everybody you know to tune in next week on Thursday and every week going forward. So what we want to do is send you out with a beautiful song that was written and performed by the band Betty at several of the major outpourings in New York City around abortion rights, sponsored by Rise Up for Abortion Rights. The song is called Rise, and it is a very good song to get us all in the mood for International Women's Day. We'll go out with that.
If one woman hurts, if one woman cries, if one man bleeds, rise up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Silence must stop, violence must end, broken body and spirit will rise again. Strength in numbers, take a stand, right the wrong, don't ask the man. If one woman hurts, if one woman cries, if one man bleeds, rise.